In a candlelit chamber of a European castle, robed figures gather around a cold altar of granite. Among the participants are powerful leaders of church and state, whispering to each other while they prepare for a human sacrifice. It sounds like a scene from a horror film or medieval legend, yet multiple witnesses insist it's real. And they call this secret ceremony the ninth circle. Welcome. Step closer, for the veil is thin, and the stories you are about to hear have lingered in the shadows, waiting for you. Tonight, we delve into the disturbing and controversial accounts surrounding the ninth circle rituals. Viewer discretion is strongly advised, as the material involves deeply sensitive allegations. While we present these claims as reported by alleged witnesses and documents, it's important to note that they remain unverified and highly disputed. Our goal is to inform, not to endorse or discredit any account, only to explore the narratives that have emerged. Now let us proceed into the shadows of the ninth circle. The story of the ninth circle entered public awareness in the early 2010s through the efforts of an independent investigative body called the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, or the ITCCS. Headquartered in Brussels and led by community activists, the ITCCS claimed to be examining atrocities against children that had been ignored by official channels. Their investigation began by probing the tragic disappearance of some 50,000 Indigenous children in Canada, children who vanished while in the custody of church-run residential schools. Researchers uncovered evidence of over 32 unmarked mass grave sites at these schools, hinting at unspeakable abuses buried in history. As testimonies were collected, a frightening picture emerged. A secret cult was potentially behind many of these and other child disappearances, a cult operating internationally and involving influential figures. Its name was the Ninth Circle. In 2014, the ITCCS set up an International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels to examine these allegations. It was an unofficial People's Tribunal. 5 judges and 27 jury members from 6 countries heard evidence throughout that year. They reviewed documented cases of over 50,000 missing children from Canada, the United States, Argentina, and Europe, all suspected victims of this clandestine Ninth Circle network. The court heard over 60 sworn testimonies from witnesses and survivors across these nations. What these witnesses described was a nightmare, a highly organized satanic cult operating within elite institutions, committing ritual human sacrifices of children on a routine basis. On July 18th and 22 of 2014, the International Common Law Court of Justice rendered extraordinary verdicts. In absentia, it convicted several prominent global figures of crimes against humanity, including murder, human trafficking, and participation in a criminal conspiracy. Those convicted by this citizen tribunal were startling. Pope Francis, also known as Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the reigning pope and head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Benedict XVI, or Joseph Ratzinger, Adolfo Pachon, which at that time was the superior general of the Jesuit order, and Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury and senior bishop of the Church of England. According to the court's findings, all of these men had personal involvement in the abuse, torture, and murder of children as part of Ninth Circle rituals. Even Queen Elizabeth II was named by eyewitnesses as having participated in occult ceremonies where children were abused and killed. The inclusion of such high-profile figures underscores the shocking scope of the accusations. The Ninth Circle is said to be embedded at the highest levels of power, spanning churches, monarchies, and other institutions traditionally seen as pillars of society. And the alleged crimes themselves are almost beyond comprehension. Witnesses testified that child sacrifices took place in multiple countries and historic sites. For example, rituals were described in the medieval Carnarvon Castle in Wales, in a secluded chateau in France, and on the grounds of Catholic and Anglican residential schools in Kamloops, British Columbia, and Brantford, Ontario, Canada. One survivor recalled being present at ceremonies in the spring of 2009 and 2010 in rural Holland and Belgium, where children were allegedly brutally sacrificed. And she believes she recognized a then prominent Catholic cleric, Jorge Bergoglio, today known as Pope Francis, as one of the perpetrators. Indeed, 2 adolescent women came forward to swear that Pope Francis harmed them during these occult rituals when they were children. Their accounts were backed by 8 other eyewitnesses, who in 2014 gave evidence of seeing Bergoglio participating in child sacrifice rites in Europe. According to the tribunal, the depravity was not limited to Europe. Jorge Bergoglio's alleged dark activities date back decades. Records obtained, reportedly from secret Vatican archives, indicated that Bergoglio was involved in satanic rites in Argentina during the dirty war years of the 1970s. One witness testified that as a young priest and bishop, Bergoglio cooperated with the Argentine military junta to traffic the babies of political prisoners into an international child exploitation ring run out of the Vatican. In other words, beyond ritual murder, the Ninth Circle was said to engage in systematic child trafficking, stealing children from the disappeared detainees and funneling them into horrific abuse networks. Perhaps the most chilling piece of evidence presented was an alleged internal church document known as the Magisterial Privilege. Dated December 25, 1967, this confidential memo titled Magisterial Privilege supposedly states that every new pope must participate in ritual sacrifices of newborn children, including consuming their blood, as part of a clandestine induction. A press release in 2014 reported that the chief prosecutor told the court, "Documents from Vatican secret archives clearly indicate that for centuries the Jesuits had a premeditated plan to ritually murder kidnapped newborn babies and then consume their blood. The plan was born of a twisted notion to derive spiritual power from the lifeblood of the innocent, thereby assuring political stability of the papacy in Rome." It was also said that, according to this document, such sacrifices were systemic and institutionalized, an ingrained secret practice dating back to at least the year 1773. Another bombshell revelation concerned Pope Benedict XVI, also known as Joseph Ratzinger. Testimony asserted that Ratzinger had participated in Ninth Circle sacrifices since 1962, when he was apparently connected with a shadowy group of fascist clergy called the Knights of Darkness. Incredibly, it was claimed that as a young priest, Ratzinger served at the Ravensbrück concentration camp during World War II, helping SS officers conduct occult rituals in which camp children were sacrificed. Some believe this detail is historically dubious, as Ratzinger was actually a teenager in 1944, but it forms part of the narrative circulated by the tribunal. Aside from popes and clergy, members of European royal families have been implicated. The tribunal heard that Prince Philip, the late husband of Queen Elizabeth II, and other British royals participated in these cult rituals. Likewise, multiple generations of Dutch royalty were named, including Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, her husband King Hendrik, and even Bilderberg Group founder Prince Bernhard, the consort of Queen Juliana. A Dutch Catholic cardinal, Jan van Roy Alfrink, was also mentioned among the perpetrators. Belgian nobility and aristocrats appeared in the testimonies as well, casting a dark shadow that echoes Belgium's own notorious child abuse scandals. These parallels raised unsettling questions. How could individuals of such high social standing be implicated in similar crimes, not just in their own countries but across borders? In trying to unravel this disturbing pattern, prosecutors turned to a revealing historical detail that shed light on how such figures could operate with impunity in places like Canada. During World War II, for example, the Dutch royal family was granted refuge in Canada, and in December 1942, the Canadian government passed an order in council published in the Canada Gazette, granting the Dutch royals full immunity from criminal prosecution. This meant that any crimes they might commit on Canadian soil, theoretically, could not be prosecuted by Canadian courts. Investigators suggest this legal exemption provided cover for Dutch elites and their allies to indulge in atrocities at places like the Mohawk Institute Residential School in Brantford, Ontario. In fact, independent archaeologists working with ITCCS did uncover children's bones in 2008 at the Mohawk School site in Brantford, before the dig was mysteriously shut down by authorities. Since then, over 30 suspected mass grave sites have been mapped at former residential schools across Canada. The Catholic, Anglican, and United Churches of Canada, as well as the federal government and Crown, have refused repeated requests to excavate these sites. To the ITCS, this stonewalling is further evidence of a cover-up protecting the Ninth Circle's crimes. With regards to the places where these rituals occur, according to witness affidavits, the Ninth Circle cult operates in numerous locations around the world, often literally in the shadows of revered institutions. Roman Catholic cathedrals in Montreal, New York, Rome, and London were cited as venues where covert rituals have occurred in the catacombs or crypt areas. Private estates and forest groves are also used for these ceremonies. One security guard even testified about a planned child sacrifice in the basement of a wealthy Montreal residence, a ritual that an ITCS team claimed to have disrupted in 2014. But what exactly happens during these so-called Ninth Circle rituals? The allegations are as ghastly as you can imagine. Survivors and eyewitnesses have provided harrowing first-hand accounts of the cult's ceremonies, and we will recount 3 of those testimonies here. Again, discretion is advised. These descriptions are extremely graphic and upsetting, so we will keep the language YouTube-friendly. One Dutch survivor named Toos Nijenhuis stepped forward publicly in 2014. In a film testimony, she described witnessing child sacrifices as a young girl, including infants being cannibalized by elite ritual gatherings. The court's chief prosecutor revealed, while summarizing testimonies, that survivors of these rituals describe newborn babies being chopped to pieces on stone altars and their remains consumed by participants. During these black ceremonies, the surviving child witnesses were forced to abuse and mutilate other children, then cut their throats with ceremonial daggers. In other words, the perpetrators not only slaughtered children, they compelled some child victims to become killers themselves, forever binding them to the cult through guilt and terror. The survivors claim that the rituals had a pattern following the seasons, often taking place on the spring equinox and other occult holy days. Another survivor from the UK, with identity protected, testified about a ritual at Carnarvon Castle in Wales. She described a subterranean room illuminated by torches, with an altar stone still scarred from ancient druidic sacrifices, a setting deliberately chosen for its dark history. In attendance, she claimed, were not only cult members in robes, but also an English High Court judge and a famous British public figure, both allegedly part of the Ninth Circle inner circle. The ritual culminated at midnight with the slaughter of a young boy brought in for that purpose. The witness remembered the child's scream being drowned out by chanting, as the cult leader's blade fell. From Canada, an Indigenous man described a 1960s ceremony at the Kamloops Residential School. He was forced to watch as a priest in a crimson robe and a woman wearing a European royal insignia, whom he later identified from photos as Queen Elizabeth, each took hold of a struggling Indigenous child, then proceeded to slit their throats over a chalice. "I'll never forget Her Majesty's face, so calm like it was normal," he said. This account echoes a long-standing allegation that in 1964, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited a Kamloops school and a number of children disappeared shortly thereafter. While often dismissed as conspiracy lore, the recent 2021 discovery of unmarked graves at Kamloops lends a haunting backdrop to such stories. Perhaps one of the most detailed statements came from a former ITCCS field secretary, Kevin Annett, who compiled many of these testimonies. According to Annett's sources, the Ninth Circle ceremonies are carefully orchestrated. A female convict child, often an orphan or kidnapped victim, is allegedly dressed in white, drugged with a sedative, and presented as a bride sacrifice. After chanting in Latin and sometimes Celtic or Germanic dialects, the child is harmed by each high priest or clergy member present. The child is then allegedly laid on the altar, stabbed in the chest in a ritual pattern, and finally dismembered. Pieces of the child's flesh are consumed raw by the participants, who believe this grants them spiritual power. The heart is often removed last, with each member taking a bite as a form of unholy communion. These claims are almost unbearably horrific, and we must note they rely solely on witness accounts. No forensic evidence was ever recovered. Yet multiple witnesses across continents who have never met each other described remarkably similar ceremonies. The consistency of the stories is what investigators point to as corroboration. And it wasn't only children who were victims. The cult allegedly also targets vulnerable adults or dissenting members for sacrifice. If a member of the ninth circle betrays the oath of secrecy, they may themselves become the next offering. One such chilling and most told case involved a woman in the cult who had begun leaking information. According to a witness, this traitor was made the centerpiece of a ceremony. 7 cult jurors cast black balls to unanimously sentence her to death. It is said that suddenly, as the sentence was pronounced, the room filled with a crack of thunder and an explosion of light, an effect attributed to the cult's invoked demonic force. In the chaos, a beastly apparition, what witnesses called the dragon, appeared and attacked the condemned woman. The entity then ripped her apart limb from limb in front of the assembly. This grotesque execution was meant to instill ultimate fear, a demonstration that even in death, the cult's victims are shown no mercy, and its traitors meet a fate out of a nightmare. Although so many claims can be presented, the ninth circle remains an allegation, not a proven reality. The official stance of the Catholic Church, the British monarchy, and other implicated institutions is either complete silence or firm denial regarding these accusations. Skeptics argue that the ninth circle theory is a melange of hoaxes, misinterpretations, and the human penchant for finding patterns in chaos. In other words, a conspiracy theory that distills our deepest fears about authority figures betraying us. And yet, the ninth circle mythos has gained notable traction in certain communities and online platforms. It taps into timeless archetypes: the corrupt priest sacrificing the innocent, the vampire-like elite feeding on youth, and the secret society plotting world dominion. These themes appear in countless movies and novels, which means the ninth circle feels familiar even to those encountering it for the first time. It's as if the collective subconscious recognizes this story. The ninth circle is, in a way, the ultimate synthesis of all such conspiracy theories. It has the occult ritual aspect, the institutional betrayal aspect, the global coordination, and the apocalyptic stakes. So where does this leave us? Are the ninth circle rituals real? An ancient hidden nightmare continuing in the 21st century? Or are they modern folklore, a terrifying reflection of our fears and a metaphor for real injustices? The answer for now might depend on who you ask and what you are willing to believe. What's indisputable is that the idea of the ninth circle has taken on a life of its own in the underground of the internet and alternative media. And it has protagonists, the survivors and whistleblowers who bravely share their stories. But also it has ancient roots and modern repercussions. For the alleged victims who have spoken out, their stories deserve to be heard with compassion. Even if one is skeptical of the cult framing, the pain and trauma in their voices are evident. As outsiders, we must tread carefully, acknowledging the controversial nature of these claims while not outright dismissing those who say they suffered unspeakable abuse. At the very least, the ninth circle narrative has helped shone light on real issues, like the historic abuse of indigenous children in church schools and the very real failures of institutions to protect the innocent. It challenges us to ask, how could so many children vanish or be harmed without justice? Is something more nefarious at play? In that sense, the ninth circle functions, at the very least, as a metaphor for institutional betrayal, painting it in the black and red colors of a satanic ritual, because that is the darkest imagery we have. In closing, the mythos or legacy of the ninth circle, in hidden history and popular culture, is one of warning and awakening. It warns that evil can wear a pious face or a jeweled crown, and that blind trust in authority can be devastatingly betrayed. Whether or not there is a literal ninth circle cult, the allegory compels us to be vigilant about the real atrocities happening in our world, like human trafficking, abuse of children, and the cover-ups by powerful organizations. As we conclude this journey into the alleged ninth circle, we reflect on the power of truth and the weight of darkness. The stories you've heard are difficult to verify, but impossible to forget. They form part of a hidden history that many will dismiss outright, and others will quietly fear might be true. In the end, keep your eyes open, stay informed, and as the old saying goes, be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. Thank you for venturing beyond the veil with us. If you enjoyed the video, then like, subscribe, and join the watchers. The shadows have more secrets to reveal. Until next time.